This is the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. I'm the host of the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. Of course, my name is Brett Snodgrass. Go subscribe on our channel on YouTube, on the Brett Snodgrass channel, and ring that bell so you get all the videos that come out each and every week. Today, I have a very special guest for you guys, Mr. Shaun McCloskey, who is the founder and CEO of Leadership Boardroom. Shaun started out as a real estate investor. He's an author. He's a nationally recognized speaker. He's considered the coach's coach, and he coaches high-caliber business owners, speakers, and coaches across the country. But today, we're going to ask you guys a question. What is your vision, and what is your purpose in life and in business? If you want to know the answer, listen to this episode with Shaun McCloskey. Here he is. So what's going on, Shaun?
What's happening, man?
Not much, man. It's exciting. You're looking good. Love the studio. I'm getting ready to rock out, play some Beastie Boys. I don't know.
My little man cave, you got to have the man cave to retreat, and goof off and act like you're 15 years old.
That's right. That's right. We fit right in, man. We should hang out, definitely. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I want to get right into it. Shaun McCloskey, Leadership Boardroom, investor, author, speaker, and runs Leadership Boardroom for entrepreneurs, CEOs, people that are in, all walks of life except they're entrepreneurs, and you help people with their vision and purpose. And man, I'm really excited, but I want to kind of start off with you. This is always my first question. Who is Shaun Mccloskey?
Oh my gosh, what a loaded question. Shaun Mccloskey is a father, husband, follower of Christ, complete wreck at times, many things. Musician, hobbyist, visionary, lots and lots of things would encompass that. That's a great question.
That's a lot of hats. You do a lot. You do a lot. Get to the train wreck part. That's like my life too. But yeah, man, I've always followed you for the last few years. I've seen you speak, and I resonate with your message. I think we both like freedom. We like to live out the things and our purpose and our vision of what we want to do. And we just had a conversation a few weeks ago about my life and where I'm at and stepping out of my business. And I heard you at a mastermind group, Collective Genius, a few years ago. And you talked about this, but I want to kind of start back in your story. You used to be, and you still are a real estate investor, but something happened in your life.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I started flipping houses in 2003 and followed the gurus, went to seminars, and I probably got a couple $100,000 deep in seminars at this point, and learned from all. There were some really good ones and some not so good ones, but went out and flipped a whole bunch of houses. And, within the first, my first year was awful. I lost $86,000 on my first deal, which was I didn't have $86,000 to lose. I didn't have $8 to lose, much less $86,000. So I almost quit in the beginning, but I was so determined to not go back to corporate and get a corporate job again that I just suffered my way through it. Anyway, 2-3 years into it, I started to build a name for myself as a guy who was flipping 70, 80 houses a year here in St. Louis. And next thing you know, I'm starting to get people 4 years into this process that are asking me to teach them how to do it and to speak and speak at the real estate meetup group here and share some of the things of what I was doing. And I was totally against it at first because I thought I'm going to share all my competition, exactly what I'm doing. But I finally got browbeat into doing this enough by a friend of mine. She said, no, the more you share, the more you give, the more you receive, which I thought was a load of crap at the time. But I did this, and next thing you know, people were doing it. And I had one of my most successful students made more than $1 million his first year of working with me. Here's the problem, though. His second year, he got a divorce. And it was like, whoa. Now, I don't take full responsibility for the divorce. They had issues before me. But here I was showing him how to run a business like I had. And the fact of the matter is I was working 70 hours a week. And it's like I'm following all the advice of all these gurus that are showing me how to make money. And I didn't know this until many years later when I started coaching many of the gurus, which I do today. But most of these guys and gals don't have a life. It's like they've got this great business and the business consumes them. And so I'm over here paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn from these guys and gals. And they're bringing me down the same path that they're in, which is, heading towards 70 hours a week and no relationship with your kids and wife and no free time for fun and hobbies and all of this stuff, which is exactly what I was teaching my students. And so I went through this conundrum of like, do I even want to teach anymore? I'm teaching people straight into a miserable life. And I wouldn't have seen it as miserable back then because I didn't know any better. I'd been doing this for so long, but that opened up this heart and desire to go, no more. You know, everybody teaches that you're supposed to work your face off, that you have to grind, and, you know, all of these new buzzwords that are out there that suggest that you have to give up everything in order to have a successful business. And it is a load of crap, but it's the biggest thing being spewed today. So, you know, a lot of my mission today is helping people to forget that garbage that they've been taught elsewhere and design a vision for what they want their life to look like and a vision for what they want their business to look like. And we do life first, because you can't possibly build a business to serve your life if you don't know what life wants to look like first.
Yeah.
So that's what I help people do. I know that's a long-winded answer, but this is what I help people do now. And I love it because, you know, some of the most successful, quote, successful people, when you dive in and look at their lives, it's like many of them, you wouldn't spend $1 on their seminar if you knew what their life looked like. You'd be real cautious of what you're going to learn from them. And so I try to avoid that at all costs today.
Yeah. And that's exactly, you know, what we're going to dive into today, guys. So Leadership Boardroom was born, and it's about really helping people live their life first, creating that vision for their life, and then designing their business around what they want their life to look like. Like when someone walks into Leadership Boardroom, what are they challenged with? Like what are they wanting? Like, and why is it so hard? And you kind of help them with this path. Like what is their problem? What are things looking like for them? And take us into that.
Yeah. So Leadership Boardroom happens to be, we now have 3 coaches that work with us and myself, and it's coaching and mastermind mixed together. And so when we bring in a new student, I happen to work with a lot of national speakers and people who run coaching organizations and people that are at fairly high levels at this point. So, and I've worked with everything from newbies to, you know, guys making 20, 30 million bucks a year and everything in between. So I've seen everything. The problems are almost all the same. It's a lack of clarity of vision of where they want to go. And so, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm working with the guy who makes 20 million bucks this year. He might have he or she, I should say, may have a crystal clear vision for some of the goals and things for the direction that they want to take the company. But when I ask people, tell me what you want your life to look like, they'll rattle off a few things, but very few people have clarity here. And, you know, I'll even go speak to a room. If there's, let's say 500 people in the room, I'll say, how many of you have ever done a business vision or a business plan before? Have you done it, or you've got an active business plan? And, you know, if it's experienced people, 90% of the hands go up. But I say, how many of you have a written life vision for what you want life to look like, and you know it inside and out? And no hands go, you know, maybe out of a room of 500 people, maybe 20 hands go up. And I say, how many of you have it in writing and it's on your person right now? And then all the hands go down. It's like, or how many of you have looked at it in the last 6 months and all the hands go down again? It's like, how are you supposed to create business objectives and plans and all this stuff? Most of you are doing it at the expense of other things that you say you care about. Or, you know, I talk to a lot of visionaries who they're so full of great ideas and they try to implement all the ideas, and all of those ideas are going to take some time. Well, where's the time going to come from? Is it going to come from something else you're doing in your business? Is it going to come from your time at the gym? Is it going to come from your time with your wife or with your kids or with your hobbies or any of those things? It's got to come from somewhere. And so lack of vision gets people moving in a direction that they're either not real sure about or moving in many directions because it's exciting. And so, you know, I know I'm going on a rampage here, but my gosh, the vision is the most important thing. When this is clear, and then you can get some help from some really smart people on how am I going to pull this off, you wouldn't believe what you can accomplish in just a year or two. It's amazing, but nobody does it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a hard thing. I mean, even when we were talking, it's such a hard thing to sit down to think of, what do I really, really want? Like, what is my vision? And that's where we get into it. When you spoke to the mastermind group that I was a part of, you kind of went over this wheel, this like wheel of life, and it had these different areas. So talk to us like, what is the wheel of life? Typically, it's where it starts out at.
All right. I brought a copy to show you. This is kind of what it looks like. It's nothing more than a wheel. It's got some categories on here like friends, love and relationship, family, your business, finances, health. And what I ask people to do is I ask them to pull this thing out and I ask them to rate themselves on a 1 to 10 scale. Where are you at versus where, 10 would be like ideally where you want to be. Where are you at? And inevitably I see, and then I ask them to shade it in. I don't know if you can see this, but it ends up looking something like this, this jaded wheel with things poking out and sticking out. And inevitably, I can see in about 2 seconds where somebody's either lacking or failing or really successful. And you see this, and it's vastly different for everybody that I do this with, but I can glance down at this and see exactly what's important to you. I can see exactly where you spend your time. And so, if your business is a 10, for example, but your family is a 1, I know where you spend your time and focus and energy real quick, just with a glance. Yeah. And so what I do with people is I say, not only rate yourself where you're at, but what does a 10 in each of these categories look like? And have you identified that? And is it in writing? Because, you just made a good comment where you ask people what their vision is for their life, and they might rattle out a few things. But when you put it in writing, for a lot of people, it's a lot harder to put it in writing, because now I'm committing to it the rest of my life, as though if it's written in stone or something crazy like this. It's not. You can change it anytime you want. But, if you say, okay, my family life, for example, is at a 1 or even a 5. Well, what does a 10 look like? Have you ever identified this? Or are you just hoping that that value number increases at some point? For most people that are very successful in business, they have a pretty good idea what a 10 looks like in business. Why not do the same thing in every other aspect of your life? So we start with life, and there's these categories here. And then when this is finished, so that you rate yourself first, then you identify what is a 10 in each of these categories. You get it in writing. By the way, before I move forward, that process, people go, oh, that's easy. I'll do that in an afternoon.
Yeah.
Good luck. I'm asking you to define the meaning of life in all of these categories. And it takes a little bit. But then once that's done, now we can flip the page over, and now we got the same thing for business. So it asks questions on here like, do your roles match your gifting? First of all, do you know what your area of gifting is? Everybody's got something I call the unique genius zone. Do you know what yours is? And do the roles in your business that you do on a daily basis match up? Right? That's one. Yeah. Another thing is, what's your customer experience like, 1 to 10 scale? Yeah. What is your marketing looking like? How's your marketing performing? How's your finances in the business? How's the accounting processes look? Operations, culture, your team, all of these things. Now we can start to build a business, but we're going to build this business with the life part in mind first. So nothing that we build in business is going to infiltrate and not allow us to live this. This is by far the most important thing. This is why you're building your business. Everybody says they're building a business because they want freedom. What do you want freedom for?
Yeah.
You want freedom so you can live this life.
Right.
And so if you don't know what this is going to look like, most people will say, and tell me how often you hear this, I'm willing to sacrifice a year or 2 or 3 so that I can get my business up and running. You ever heard that?
Yeah. I hear it.
Guess what happens later. There? Yeah. 3 years turns into 10 years, and
because you keep moving the target, right?
Course.
You keep going higher and higher. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what everybody teaches.
That's what my father did. Yeah. And my father worked his tail off. He was in the military for 20 years, had the mindset that if I work really hard, people will notice and I'll get a raise and I'll get a better position. And he did. He finally retired as a major in the United States Army. So he had an officer position, but so what? I mean, he died at 53 years old. So he worked his way all the way up to the top so that he could have a life at some point. He never even got to experience it. Wow. He worked his tail off all the time. And so, you learn from the people around you's mistakes and successes. And I saw that and I said, that's not going to be me. I want a business that allows me to travel with my family. We traveled, my gosh, at least half of this entire summer. We were traveling the country because that fits our vision. I want to be able to be there for my friends in their time of need when they call. So I have a business that allows me to do that now. I want to work in my unique genius zone the overwhelming majority of the time, which, by the way, off subject here, but when I did this exercise the first time and I asked what percentage of my day was I operating in my unique genius zone. Now, keep in mind, I was already running a successful, quote, successful business at the time. But when I looked at that, what percentage of my day, my actual work day on average, am I spending in my zone? First of all, I had to figure out what my unique genius zone was. Second of all, once I did, the number was like maybe 5, maybe 10% of my day was spent in that zone. The rest of it was filled with other stuff that, I quote, had to do.
Yeah.
And just that one thing alone, I switched that in 1 year. I changed my vision. I said, I'm only going to work on stuff in my unique genius zone. At least 50% of my day has to be that. And I said that because I didn't believe 100% was possible back then. But I said 50% sounds possible. The very next year, I took a business and I multiplied my income times 4 in 1 year. Wow. Just by operating in the area that I was supposed to be operating in and not taking on all the other stuff. So this is a tool that allows you to say yes to the things that fit and no to the things that don't fit. And No is about the most powerful word you can learn to use.
Yes.
When something doesn't fit this anymore, I say no to it. So
Yes. And it's kind of a gut check too. And it really talks about priorities. And I was listening to a podcast last week, and this CEO was going over his priorities. He was talking to a coach and was listening to all his priorities. And he only spent 3 minutes a day with his kids. And the coach looked at his priorities and he saw kids, and he marked off his kids off of his priority list. And the guy got really upset. He's like, "What are you doing? You're saying I don't love my kids, or they're not important to me?" And he said, "No, I didn't say that. I just said they're not a priority."
wow.
And that would just kind of like hit him, and it changed his life, right? He sold his business and started a smaller business, and so he could spend time with his kids. But is that kind of what you see when people start to fill out this wheel of life? It's like, wow, my priorities are a little bit out of line here.
Yeah, and it's not always that their business is taking over their kids. Sometimes sometimes people have a hard time actually focusing enough on work.
Yeah.
You know, they're so busy on all the other things that, you know, at some point you need to make a living too. And,
Yeah.
and so I work with guys like that too, and gals. But yeah, I can tell what somebody's priorities are, first of all, by looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, if I look at where you spend your money and what your calendar looks like, I know everything that's a priority to you very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can lie to yourself and tell yourself that your kids are a priority. But in the CEO's case, it's like, how long are you going to keep telling yourself that crap?
Yeah.
All I have to do is look at your calendar 3 minutes a day, and you're telling me that that's a priority for you? No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know, I could probably see in his calendar 50 other things every day that are much more important to him than spending time with kids. But here's the challenge. Like, sometimes things like kids or your spouse or even your health, or certainly hobbies, traveling, things like that, those don't always come with a sense of urgency attached to them, because, you know, if I ignore my wife today, she's probably not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, add that up over 5 or 10 years, or my gosh, I've worked with guys who've been divorced after 30 years of marriage. Add all these things up over time, and they start to add up. They create resentment and regrets and all kinds of things. And so when your vision's crystal clear and you're actively pursuing it, even though it can change, it can change whenever you like it to change. But when it's crystal clear and you're pursuing it, you've now got a target, you know, a target to reach for. And that target changes over time. Mm-hmm. You're never going to arrive saying, I'm living all of my vision now and I'm done. Mm-hmm. That's not the purpose of it. But it does ask you to identify, what are your priorities?
Yeah.
And are they in line with how you're behaving? Most of the time, the answer is no.
Yeah. Have you ever seen like everybody have a 10 on everything? Like their life is perfect.
Not if they're being honest.
Yeah.
Not if they're being honest.
And we have seasons of life, right? Like right now, my kids are young. When they're older, my priorities could change a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. They change. When something big happens in your life, like I sold my company. I had a business partner 4 years ago when I met you, and I sold my ownership in my company. I had spent, oh my gosh, 8-9 years building that company up to what it was. We had 19 coaches with us. We had hundreds and hundreds of people in our organization and employees and everything. And my identity was wrapped around that company. I didn't know it at the time, but I thought that's who I was. And when I sold that, oh my gosh, the vision had to be redone for sure, because it's like, now I don't have a partner to worry about. I don't have to answer to anyone. I literally get to do anything I want. And so what would I do? Matter of fact, this is a really important part of the process. If I could touch on it real quick. One of the things I've learned over time is that it's really hard to come up with your vision when you're filtering your vision with your current circumstances. So what I mean by that is, well, one example would be, I've worked with, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of people at this point, helping them craft their vision. I've extracted it from people. Not one person that I have ever worked with has ever wrote down and said, you know what I want out of life? I want lots of debt. Right? No one says it.
Right.
You know, now they might use debt as a tool, and we can have that discussion, but no one ever says they have debt in their vision. What they have in their vision is they want things. They want the house, or they want the car, or they want the rental property, and they think that that's going to spit off enough money to cover the debt. But no one says debt. And so what happens is, with something like that, if you don't know any other way to, let's say, acquire a rental property except taking on debt, you'll think that's a necessary part of your vision, when in fact it's not. I can show you a model where you can acquire 20 rental properties free and clear in the next year or two, depending on how aggressive you want to be, without ever borrowing a single dollar. But that didn't come to me until the vision was crystal clear. At some point, I said, debt's not in my vision. I don't want debt anymore, but I still want the benefits of debt. So how can I have all the benefits without the drawbacks? And that answer didn't come to me right away, but it came over time.
Yeah.
And so that's a perfect example of today. I owe no man a thing. There's no business debt. There's no house payment, car payments. There's no payments on anything. So my bills are nothing today. And if I want to change my business tomorrow or anything like that, I can do it because I have the freedom and flexibility to be able to change it on a dime if I want. Now, that might not be your vision, but it is mine. And so if you're not careful, you'll filter your current vision with your circumstances. So what I was doing before, for example, when I had a partner, is I would start to write down my vision of where I wanted to take the company next, but I would always pause and I would say, well, I wonder what my partner wants.
Yeah.
Or I wonder if this is going to affect my employees that I really care about. And you have to do one thing that sounds really harsh, but I call it my burn it down exercise. What I mean is you have to burn everything. You have to, in your mind, burn everything down. You have no business. You have no employees. You have no partner. You have no nothing. When you're crafting your vision, what would you want if you could start from scratch and you had nothing to worry about? No one's opinion to worry about. No one to take care of. No, what would you build? And second caveat to that is, especially when we're talking about business, let's pretend for a moment that you have no need for financial gain at the moment. Like you're not getting filthy rich at the moment, but all of your needs are covered and you're just fine. So knowing those two things, what would you create in your business if you could create anything? When I ask people to answer that question, you should hear what they come up with. But most people can't do it initially because they're too busy focused. Well, if I could do anything, gosh, I wouldn't. I just worked with a guy who flips about 90, maybe 100 houses a year. And he doesn't want to do that many, but he's got a marketing train and a staff and everything. And he has to now to keep that train rolling. And he goes, man, if I could do it the way I want it, I wouldn't have to flip 100. Like I have to do this now all the time and keep this train going. And I said, okay, well, without throwing out a number, like, what do you want to do? And he goes, man, I just really enjoy like the rehab process. I used to love getting in and picking out all the stuff, but now it's sort of a machine and I've lost some touch with it because it's so big. And but he's scared.
Yeah.
Because he's got staff and employees and he's got contracting crews now that he's got to keep busy or else he loses the contracting crews, and he's spending $50,000 a month in marketing. And it's like, I don't know how I can do all that stuff. So he shuts down and he stops dreaming. And that's the kiss of death for a vision. The vision is all about dreaming. So you have to burn it down. You have to pretend like money's not an issue right now. What would you create from scratch? What would all these things look like at a 10 if you could do anything you want? As cheesy as that sounds, not easy.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking when you're kind of going through that exercise is I put a filter on myself. Like I have a business, or what does my wife want? Or I have to live here because of this. I can't live anywhere because I have to live here because my family's here, or whatever it is. And so again, do you think it's important to have someone help you extract and to remind you that, hey, no, everything's gone.
Yeah.
And just that constant reminder. Is that important? Is that helpful?
Well, it's funny because there's a fairly alarming number of people that I consider absolutely brilliant and incredible visionaries that when I ask them to do some of this stuff, they just can't do it. So that's one of the things I do for my students is I literally sit down with them usually it takes about a half a day, and I ask thousands of questions. They don't bring anything. They don't prepare anything. I just ask questions and questions and I type while they talk. And usually at the end of about 4 hours, or so, I have their entire vision mapped out on a page. And I did this, I think, Ron Phillips, maybe I did this with him. He was one of the first people I did this with years ago. And I flipped the computer around. I showed him, I said, is this kind of your vision? Cause he couldn't get anything out. He literally had a blank page for months. He would not put anything down to paper, but he's one of the most brilliant guys I've ever. He flipped 800 houses last year, to give you an idea. The guy knows how to run a business. And great visionary, but he couldn't get it out of his head. And when I spun the computer around him and showed him, I said, is this kind of what your vision is? He starts crying. If you know Ron, he looks like, what do you call it? Mr. Clean. He's a big built dude, bald head, and he's a buff guy, and he starts crying. And I said, well, is it that bad? And he goes, no, it's exactly what I wanted. How did you do this? I'm like, you said it all. You just wouldn't write it down. So yes, it's very helpful to have somebody extract it from you if you struggle with this.
That's awesome. When I was reading your bio, you talk about you have a motto: give first. Do you encourage everybody to kind of have that motto? What is their life? What is their scripture? What's your life verse? Yours is give first. So do you help people come up with this motto about what their life they can always go back to?
Oh, what a great question. I don't know that you're actually giving me an idea. I don't know that I've asked any of our members to turn it into a motto. But the vision encompasses, the vision's like a multiple motto document.
Yeah.
It's like, what is life and business about? Well, it's all these things. So it's almost an accumulation of many mottos, I guess I would say.
So yours,
but it
yours
is important
was,
to have a statement as well.
yeah, definitely. Well, yours was give first, and you kind of go back to that one person who said, hey, if you give, you will receive. So talk about that a little bit. Give first. And you do this in the last, decade plus years of your life. What has that done for you? Give first.
Oh my gosh. It opens up doors that you can't even fathom would be opened. How many times have you met somebody or gone to a conference and you meet somebody and you can tell they have an agenda for you right off the bat?
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, what does that feel like? I mean, when they're trying to sell you something instantly or, I'll never forget when I started speaking, this was in probably 2007 or 8 or so. I met a gentleman named Stan Bauer who took me in under his wing, and he literally became like a father to me. He discipled me for 8 years, and we met for breakfast every single week for 8 years. He changed my life. But the first time that we ever met up, now I'm starting to speak. I'm actually starting to travel and speak. I'm now starting to make a little bit of name for myself. And so the more you do that and get in that spotlight, the more people want something from you. Mm-hmm. And so I got used to being in a position where people would all the time say, hey, can I take you to lunch and pick your brains and things like that? And so I met Stan at this men's conference, and he said, hey, let's go to lunch next week. And I was like, oh, I just don't have time to go to lunch with, when you go speak to a room of 500 people and 20 people say, let's go to lunch, your calendar will be filled the whole year, and you have no idea why. So for some reason I said yes to Stan, and we had lunch, and we had just a great conversation for about an hour. And at the end of the conversation, I said, is there something I can do for you? And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, you can have lunch with me and get to know each other. How about that? Is that okay? And I thought, I love it. No, it's not okay, because I don't do that. And what a gut check. I realized I don't offer to take somebody to lunch just to get to know them. I have an agenda.
Yeah.
Because I have to do so much business back then. I have an agenda for everything. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't somehow benefit me, I won't do it anymore. And it was a gut check. Like, hey, what have you become? You can't even go get to know a man who ultimately changed my whole life just because he wanted to go to lunch, because I'm so busy with business, and I don't have a vision of what I want my friendships to look like. And I don't have a vision of being able to have free, open time to just meet somebody and hang out just for no other reason than it's another human being. And, today I have that, but it was not okay for me because I had an agenda. And so when you say where did give first come from, it's like, stop having an agenda for every single thing that you do. There's nothing wrong with having an agenda in business at times, but my gosh.
Yeah. Especially when you're business and entrepreneur to entrepreneur, when you meet somebody, it's like, okay, you have your small talk, and then you get to, okay, what do you want?
Yep.
So it's always like that. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I love that story.
And what happens is the more you give, people receive it really well. And I'm not giving to get, but I get because I give. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but even on an interview like this, I have no agenda today. I'm going to give you guys some of these tools. I've got a little link you can go to. And will something good come from it someday? I don't know, but it always does. So just show up and give, and you'll get. Don't worry about it.
That's right. I think just our audience, if you guys are listening to this, just by doing this exercise, it's just like it could change everything. Just a little bit of pieces of your vision. That's amazing. Shaun, one last question. Like, you have a story about Leadership Boardroom, a success story, someone that their life changed. We've talked about a couple of people, Ron Phillips and a couple other ones, but do you have any stories?
I have so many of them. You know Larry Goins?
Yeah.
Okay. Larry Goins, for those of you that don't know him, is a Leadership Boardroom member and has been for probably 4 years now. Him and his right arm in his business is named Candace Brome. She's amazing. And Larry is very much the visionary, and Candace is very much the integrator, or she basically implements all of Larry's crazy ideas. And so when I met Larry, he was really struggling because here's a guy who's been in the spotlight. I actually went to Larry's seminars when I first got started. He's been in business forever. He's one of the guys that taught me how to flip houses, and now I'm coaching him, which is interesting. You start coaching your heroes. It's like you realize that everybody that was your hero is just as big of a mess in some area as you, right? It's kind of humbling, which is kind of cool. But he, great businessman, great visionary, great ideas. But at the time, he was so busy and just couldn't make time. He said he hadn't ridden his Harley Davidson in years. He was thinking about selling it. His family life was, marginal, no hobbies anymore. He used to love to play guitar like this. And we had great conversation about it. I said, when's the last time you played guitar? And he's like, it's been years. He used to play in bands, loved it. And I said, why don't you do any of these things anymore? And he said, I just don't have time, man. I'm running businesses. And so what I found is that he had a challenge that is not uncommon at all, where he had too many things going on at once. And so he's always busy. By the way, if you feel overwhelmed all the time, like you're constantly juggling or spinning plates, chances are you got too much going on. And so I sat down with Larry and I said, what business are you in? Now, that seems like the most ridiculously basic question that anybody should be able to answer. No one can answer this, at least not with a simple answer. They say, what? I say, what business are you in? And Larry said, real estate. Okay. I start diving a little bit further, deeper into it. And I find out that he flips houses. So some of them he wholesales, he rehabs, two completely different businesses, by the way. He has rental properties. That's a completely different business than a flip. He has a hard money lending business. He owns a real estate investor association where he lives in North Carolina. He travels and speaks around the country and sells books and tapes and courses and stuff like that. 50 weeks a year. Wow. 50. He has a coaching business. He has a high level coaching business where he works very deep one-on-one with people. And he has a low level that he does a lot of group coaching with. Oh my gosh, what else? I'm missing a bunch. There was about 13 of them.
Wow.
And he lumped them all together and said, I'm in real estate. All of these, even though they're real estate, they're completely different businesses. And I asked people to identify, how many businesses are you trying to run right now? Most people have at least 3 or 4. Some people have 20. And so we started sitting down with this, and this is where the whole burn it down thing came from, because I sat with them for a whole day. I flew out to spend some time with them. I wanted to see their operation and see what life and business really looked like. And, every time I was asking Larry to dream, he couldn't dream, because I said, what would you do? Let's say you could just start over, you could do it. And his mind would always go to the numbers. Well, the first thing I would do is I would make money by doing this. And I'm like, no, Larry, put the numbers to the side for it. Let's just pretend like whatever you create's going to work. Like, what would you do? And he couldn't remove the filters, even though he's a brilliant man, because every time he would say, well, maybe I wouldn't travel so much. Maybe I don't need to travel 50 weeks a year. His brain would go, yeah, but these associations around the country are counting on me to bring in revenue. And that brings in revenue for my company. And if I don't do that, then we're not going to be able to get coaching students, and then we won't sell courses. And so all of these things were intertwined, but they were different businesses. I should also mention, he was an owner operator of all of them to some degree. None of them were businesses.
Yeah.
He had to work in all of them. So it wasn't even a real business to begin with. And that's where the burn it down exercise came from. I said, Larry, you got to burn down everything for a second. You got to burn down Candace. And Candace is looking at me like, well, burn me? I go, yep, you're burned. You're out of here. Larry, burn down your family, burn down the building, the office building that you have that, you got a mortgage on and you got responsibilities for. All of this stuff is burned down. What would you do? And it took him a while. Like, this was the first half of the day to get to this point. And finally he stopped and he goes, you know what? I can do anything? And I go, yep. He said, this isn't even possible, so I don't even know why I'm saying it. I said, Larry, shut up. You can do anything. What would you do? And he said, man, I would teach. I love teaching real estate. I love it, but I don't love traveling anymore. He said, so if I could do it any way I wanted, I would only do like maybe 3 or 4 classes a year, and it would be at my office. Like people would come to see me. I wouldn't go see them. And I was like, okay. So I wrote that on the board. I said, only 3 or 4 times a year, not 50. And he goes, no, man, I love it, but I don't want to do it that much. I'm doing it that much because I have to, because it needs the money to sustain the business, you know? And I said, okay, anything else? He goes, yeah, I love my real estate business. I love flipping houses, but he goes, there's one piece of it that I love. Everything else I don't love. He said, I love negotiating on the phone, and I'm one of the best in the country at it. And he is. I mean, he's phenomenal. That's not him being arrogant. That's like, he sucks at many things, but that's the one thing he's really good at, right? And I think we all have that to some degree. So he said, I would just like, these leads would be teed up for me by somebody else. I'd get on the phone and I would close them over the phone and maybe go look at a house once a week or twice a week if I wanted to. And I was like, okay. So I wrote that down. I said, anything else? And he goes, you know, the hard money lending business would be cool, but he goes, I wouldn't do anything in it. My wife really wants to do that business and she's good at it and she loves it. So if that's in her vision, I would just act as an advisor in that business and that's all. But I would just stick to my 2 things. That's it. And I go, wow, that is the start of a vision.
Yeah.
And so now that we've got the start of it, now we can say, okay, what are you doing currently that doesn't fit? You can imagine with 13 different businesses going on, how much stuff didn't fit into those really 2 categories, you know, negotiating over the phone whenever he feels like it and teaching 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. Almost everything he was doing didn't fit.
Yeah. And
so now fast forward, he had to make some major changes, but when he got crystal clear on the vision and why these were so important, then making the decisions, they weren't all easy decisions, but he could at least make some decisions. So he did have to let go of some staff. But in order to do it, he put together some really hefty exit packages for them to make money, or he found them jobs with somebody else who had more of a business like what he was doing. And so he didn't leave them high and dry, but he was able to make these decisions. And within, I think it was 7 or 8 months, I'd have to remember the numbers, but they shaved off, you know, this is a guy who was bringing in some money anyway, but they shaved off more than $100,000 a month in expenses. And their income they actually dipped their income just a little bit because they didn't have 13 businesses, but you'd be surprised. It didn't drop off. It just went down a hair and their expenses went down tremendously. So they got about $1 million a year raise with that 5-6 hours worth of exercise because they got crystal clear. And, you know, that might be an extreme example. If you got beginners on here listening, they go, well, you know, I'm not there yet, but it's the same thing. You know, entrepreneurs have all these crazy ideas. You cannot be owner, operator, implement all of them and have any of them work. So get your vision figured out, get it crystal clear and focus on one. And last thing, focusing on one thing is scary because if that thing doesn't work and you got all your eggs in one basket, it's scary. But my most successful students do one thing in their business and they do it really, really freaking well.
I love that. And again, if our listeners are just starting out, I think just going back, start with the vision. Because we talked about Larry. He didn't start with this vision. So all of a sudden he's an entrepreneur brain. He's got all these things going on. It's harder to get out. Right? It's like you got all this stuff. It's hard to pull back and to get out of that situation than it is to not start it and then to start with your vision.
Well, and so Larry, with him speaking so much and being in the spotlight, he has opportunities being slung at him every single day. Larry, we should do this together and we should do, and all of them are great ideas. Most of them. You know, but the first question now that the vision's crystal clear is, does this opportunity fit my vision? Does it fit all of the aspects of my vision? And most of the time, the answer is no. Now, it might be a great idea. It might make lots of money or whatever. But most of the time, if you really filter it with the vision, the answer is no. If the answer is yes, there's a whole series of filters that we go through from there. And by the way, money is like 10th down on the list. There's lots of ways to make money. But does it fit the vision? Now, here's where Larry and Candace work really well together because Candace is still his right arm. And Candace becomes the filter. When Larry has all these ideas and he says, hey, I've got these 3 new ideas of how we're going to implement whatever this month. Candace goes, okay, Larry, where would you like that to fit into the priority list? Because here's our priority list right now. Would you like to knock something else down a few notches? Where's the time going to come from to do these 3 new ideas? And where does it fit on the priority list? And just with that alone, usually the ideas fall off to the wayside.
Yeah.
You know,
I love
and
it.
it's important. Remember I said, the most important thing about this document is being able to say no to the wrong things.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
my gosh, that's a powerful tool.
Exactly. Guys, if you're tuning in, get a hold of, I just want to step back real quick. So Shaun, if someone's tuning in here, where should they go? Like, what's their first step? We'll talk about the Wheel of Life. What should they do? Yeah,
start with that. I put together a little video for your people just this morning, explaining how to do this. And I put the Wheel of Life on a little webpage. It is www.leadershipboardroom.com/podcast.
Awesome.
And it's my free gift to you. There's no strings attached to anything like that. Just go there. You'll be able to download the Wheel of Life and the Wheel of Business. It'll have a little video instructional message there that shows you exactly how to do and what to do with it next. And it's real simple, but start with that and fill this sucker out and then say, all right, if I'm not a 10 on any one of these, what's missing? What would make it a 10? And that's the start of a vision. Now, I fully expect you to not know how to pull it off. That's fine. You're not going to know how, but that'll at least say, here's what I need to be working on. And then you can say, well, I don't know how to, for example, if health is a priority, it needs to be a priority. And let's say you need to lose 50 pounds. You may not know how to do it. And so you may need to get a coach or you may need to get some help, but the solutions will come once the what is figured out, right? You gotta have the what, you gotta have the why, then the how comes later. Everybody wants to go to how first. That's not how it works. It's what you want. Why do you want to lose 50 pounds? Why do you want to be thinner than you are right now? Why do you want to run a successful business? Why? That's really, really important to understand. And if you don't know that, when obstacles come up, you won't overcome the obstacles if your why is not big enough. But before the why, everybody says start with why. No, start with what, then why, then how.
Sounds good, guys. Check that out, leadershipboardroom.com/podcast. We're going to put that in our description on the Brett Snodgrass channel on YouTube. Shaun McCloskey, awesome to hang out with you, man. It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me out. I appreciate you letting me yap and keep on yapping. Hopefully this helps somebody,
No, that's good,
it
guys.
helped me.
Thanks, Shaun. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.